Actually, we met the first day of university when we started to study. The first day when they were showing us all the buildings of our faculty, we met. And actually, the first thing we did actually together was learning Spanish, because I was teaching Spanish.
And I absolutely wanted to learn Spanish.
So that was the way we first met. And that wasn't very successful because Lawrence didn't learn, so I wasn't a very good teacher and he wasn't a very good pupil. But that's the way we met the first time, and then we did some collaborations during our studies in Hanover, and in '96 I founded Topotek 1, and I was looking for someone to join me doing that. And then, because we didn't do anything for maybe 2 years together, and then I called Lawrence and I asked him if he would be interested in joining forces, and so that's the way it works. So we know another for a long time, and have quite a symbiotic relationship, I would say. So because we had the time also to grow together, you know, it was kind of. So we know another in very different situations, so to speak, you know, and that helps. Well, in the end, we work as if we would be one person. You know, that means that was what symbiosis means in the end. You know, it's one organism that has like different parts, and of course, we have different specifications in which we work more. So all the area of competitions and design and public relation and teaching and research is things that I do a little bit more than Lawrence. And Lawrence deals more with all the practical things of the office. He's actually also the office manager, taking care of all the money issues, for example. But he also directs all the construction projects. He manages the construction projects, organizes the construction projects. So all the project leaders work under his mandaments.
But there are oftentimes we change our positions, so I do the things Martin is doing, or vice versa, but which makes fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a bit curious.
Yeah, that's like this, but this means also, yeah, we can. But it's not that we have a clear separation of these things. You know, it's they informally grow together, these issues. You know, for us, the design process doesn't stop because we start to construct. You know, and the thinking about construction is while we are designing, not out of perception. So in the end, it's a fluid process, I would say, and it depends on the time we have. It depends on the question that appear. Sometimes we do things in which we don't involve the other one almost at all, and sometimes we collaborate intensely on the things. But most of the projects are intense collaborations between the both of us.
Yeah. But there are no, I think this loose of borders, that's interesting. That there are no strict borders, neither between us nor between the process of the collaboration.
Well, for me, there are two things of importance in that concern. One is that the tradition of landscape architecture is actually an art tradition, because if we would define art as the stuff that you don't really need, you know, a house you need because you need it to protect you from weather, you need it to protect you from your property. It needs all these things. So to a certain extent, it's a practical object, even if it's nice. A garden, in the end, as pictures or sculptures, I think that you don't really need, yeah, that you need on top of these bare necessities. So the tradition of garden architecture, of landscape architecture, always have been a luxury tradition and not one of necessity. So this tradition actually was cut a bit, trying to functionalize the profession, trying to make it necessary, you know. because for our older generations, for our forefathers, it was good to make it functional, to tell also the cities that they have to do certain things. But this is also right. Obviously, children need playgrounds, for example, and obviously cities need green spaces to be good cities. So there is obviously also certain functionality in it, but as there is also in art a certain functionality to give, or in religion, to give us a soul to things. So that is one thing that is important to understand, that our tradition is actually an art tradition. The second thing is that we maybe in a sense revived it and expanded. I think for us what makes it maybe unusual is that we expand the possibilities that do, always coming from the tradition of landscape architecture and of the art and the history of it. We try to expand the possibilities that what you can do with it, without having to restrict it even to the garden or to an open space, because we also do indoor installations, but always with the motivation of the garden as an interactive piece of art, as a piece of art that includes, that allows you to use all your senses, you know, because normally art is always kind of, it has only one area that it works with. It's visual, or it's music, it's for your ear, it's auditive, or whatever. The garden actually offers the whole range of possible experiences. You can smell something in the garden, you can eat something in the garden, you can see something in the garden, you can listen, you can hear something in the garden. So this kind of complete experience possibility. This, I always say, gardens are like 3D movies, real 3D movies in the end. And that is what fascinates us, how one can work with it, expanding it, because in the end it's also a very traditional and conservative profession. So without expanding it, it would be completely boring, because then it's just horticulture, then it's just flowers and shrubs and plants. And so we try to expand, using the history as a source. We try to expand this, the artistic aspects of the tradition, and the strategy, the artistic strategies to work. That's something that also architects and other designers do. I think that what we have been discussing before we started the interview, that people like Olafur Eliasson actually do things that are similar to what we do. So I think the artists are becoming less artistical, and the whole design professions, including fashion and architecture, are moving into the art sector. So I think this dissolution of borders in that respect also is part of our zeitgeist, I would say. Ein Ding als Hausordnung. Also man könnte das ganze Ding auch mal nicht versichern. Welche zuerst kommt, können wir auch überlegen. Das ist mir egal. Und da kommt man hier. Teil von der gesamten Prozess. Letztendlich. Damit müssen wir nicht verrückt machen. Aber hier wird man die Struktur nochmal gemacht. Vielleicht kann man die auch noch stärker ausarbeiten. Weißt du, die geht ja fast verloren. Well, I was inspired by Olafur Eliasson, I must say. I like his stuff very much. It's very related to what we do. It plays actually, I mean, the garden, the artistic strategy of the garden is a strategy of fake in the end. You know, or let's say the romantic artistic aspect of the garden is a fake attitude. That means it was to copy nature, or to make nature even better, more sublime, more picturesque, more, but in the end using the elements of nature. And this kind of working on a very thin layer between reality and abstraction, because you use real plants, you know, and you use real spaces, but you do fake things, you know. And this kind of thin layer between reality and abstraction, I think that's something that Olafur Eliasson also works with. Where is a phenomena? Is art, or is it just physics, or is it, you know, is it reality? And these kind of things are something that fascinated me, or recently fascinated me very much.
Solche großen Asphaltflächen, sagen, präparieren wir schon vor,
Sind immer noch ein bisschen zu viel.
irgendwie besser aussieht.
Ja, weiß ich nicht. Also wir sagen, ein System,
es gibt Felder, ja.
Es gibt dann Felder, sind dann manchmal die Bäume im Feld.
Feldstruktur.
Ja, aber
dann
ja,
irgendwie.
Nee. Weil dann ist sozusagen das Thema, wie man sich hier durch diese Räume auch bewegt.
We love all kinds of projects, and we don't select really. So
They select us.
They select us. That's it.
It's a bit accidental. It's a mix of accident, and I mean, we do a lot of competitions. Yeah, so most of the 90% of the projects we do come out of competitions, and some of the competitions we do together with architects or with artists, and some we do alone, and it's always it's a bit coincidental what comes and what doesn't come. So
But
we
that-
don't select in the end. I don't think that we ever said to a project no, because also the challenge for us, everything is for us a challenge, especially because we use an artistic attitude. And also, in the end, also a very eclectic attitude. We don't follow a kind of ideology of what we do. We change motivation, we change strategies, we change the way we work, also depending on the project that approaches us. So in the end, it's actually the other way around. The project, I think the projects select us.
Ja, also hier wird die Unterteilung jetzt
Arbeitet
so,
da weiter.
aber
Ich finde damit letztendlich aber trotzdem jetzt schon mehr oder weniger zufrieden. Wenn es aber funktional, kann es funktionieren.
Well, it depends again very much on the project. As I said, as we use also different strategies, it can be that we start in a very, most of the time, nevertheless, it's a very intuitive approach, a very associative approach, a very talkative approach too. So we are not this kind of autistic artist sitting down and waiting till you have like the idea that comes down to you and so on. So it's more like it's more that we have an associative and very group-oriented process as well. So we sit together with our people and start to talk about the project and think of possibilities and in the end it's an associative process that starts and then continues till the project ends. Yeah. So that is similar to all the projects, but of course there are more simple projects that don't need as much, you know, and others that are more, that deserve and need also more treatment, if you want.